Today I want to continue with the next couple verses from Colossians chapter 4, following up the verse about devoting yourselves to prayer. And these are verses 5 and 6. And listen to what Paul says. I'm just going to read them both. Conduct yourselves wisely toward outsiders, making the most of the time. And then our verse for the day, let your speech always be gracious. Let your speech always be gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you may know how you ought to answer everyone. Again, under the heading of using what you've been given, how we speak. The ability to speak is a gift, and how we speak as a follower of Christ is so important. And in the time in which we live, it's challenging as a Christian to try to follow what Paul says here, because sadly, first of all, in the culture as a whole, and with people who are leaders, highly visible people in our country and our culture, you do not, unfortunately, from many of them, hear them always being gracious in their speech. Sometimes, sadly, far from it. And unfortunately, also, many people who are Christians, and again, have a public persona, they fall far short of what Paul says in this verse. What would it mean for your speech to always be gracious? Well, gracious is obviously the same Greek word from which we get the word grace. And what is grace? It's unmerited or undeserved favor. So Paul here in these two verses, he's talking specifically about how do we conduct ourselves as Christians towards those who are non-Christians. How do we make the most of the time that we live in and the opportunities that we have with outsiders. And this is a huge growth point for the church as a whole in America, and for us as individual Christians, is how do I speak with and to and even about those who are outside the family of God? We know that one of the biggest barriers to people even considering Christ or considering attending a worship service is that so many people who are not believers regard Christians as judgmental and arrogant. And so that's the last thing we want to be in our speaking and in our attitude towards those who are outside right now of the family of God, which is the church. And so I just really encourage you to watch and monitor and take note of your speech. How am I talking about those who are not yet believers? Do I speak in a way that is gracious, that's seasoned with salt, that is appropriate and fitting? Or would people detect an air of arrogance or pride or judgment that would put up a wall or a barrier in terms of trying to communicate with and build a relationship with someone who we're trying to lead to Christ? I pray that your speech would be gracious today.